The courthouse air always smells like burnt coffee and old paper, like someone tried to laminate anxiety. I got there early anyway. Not because I wanted to win some seating war, because I wanted to see the board with the day's docket before my sister could perform her little scene in front of the hallway crowd. I stood near the posted list, close enough to read, far enough to not look like I was begging for my own name. Estate of Marlene Kessler. Petition to determine heirship and enforce settlement. My sister had actually titled it like I was a criminal who needed enforcing. The security guard waved the next group through the metal detector. A woman in a blazer emptied her bag like she'd been trained for it. I set my tote down, slid my keys into the tray, and kept my face neutral as the wand skimmed my arms. "Any liquids?" the officer asked. "Just a water bottle," I said, and I could hear how steady my voice sounded. That mattered. In places like this, your tone becomes evidence even when you don't mean it to. Behind me, someone laughed, bright and too loud for 7 in the morning. I didn't turn right away. I didn't have to. I knew that laugh. Brielle moved through the security line like it was a red carpet. My mother, Diane, floated beside her with a practiced expression of sorrow, the kind she used at church when she wanted people to think she'd been wronged, but didn't want them to ask what she'd done. Brielle had a folder tucked under her arm, thick, tabbed, color-coded. The kind of folder you buy when you want the world to believe you're organized, even if the truth inside is rotten. She saw me, and her smile sharpened. "Leah," she called out like we were old friends. "I wasn't sure you'd show." I kept my eyes on the tray as I collected my watch and keys. "I'm here." Diane pressed a hand to her chest. "Honey, this didn't have to happen." I didn't answer her. That was the first rule Grandma taught me without ever saying it out loud. When someone wants you to react, silence is a weapon. Brielle leaned closer, lowering her voice like she was doing me a favor. "You can still sign today," she whispered. "Stop embarrassing yourself." Embarrassing myself? In court. Over a woman who used to braid my hair while she watched old movies and told me to never let anyone rush my signature? I looked at Brielle's folder, then at my mother's tight hands, then at the bailiff calling people toward the courtroom doors. "Good morning," I said, calm enough to sound almost polite. Brielle's eyes flicked down to my tote. "Is that it?" she asked. "That's all you brought? A little purse and a brave face?" I let her think that. I wanted her confident, because I wasn't walking in empty-handed. Inside my tote, wrapped in a plain manila envelope, was something I'd been carrying like a heartbeat for days. It wasn't flashy. No gold seals. No dramatic ribbon. Just one thick envelope with a notary stamp across the flap and a signature I recognized as well as my own. Denton and Harrow, estate counsel, Grandma's attorney. The same attorney Brielle and my mother claimed had no idea what Grandma really wanted. The clerk opened the courtroom doors and called our case. The courtroom itself was smaller than people imagine. Wood paneling, hard benches, and a seal behind the judge's chair that looked like it had been polished with impatience. Brielle sat at the petitioner's table with her lawyer, a man named Colin Pierce, whose suit fit like he'd been poured into it. My mother sat right behind them, hands folded, eyes already damp. I sat at the respondent's table alone. That was intentional. My own attorney was waiting in the back row with a slim binder and a posture that said she'd rather let the other side exhaust themselves first. Her name was Maris Delgado. She'd told me very plainly, "Let them talk. Let them overreach. Then we hand the judge something that makes noise." The judge came in, a woman in her late 50s with iron gray hair and the kind of calm that meant she'd seen every family try to weaponize grief. She took her seat, glanced at the file, and then looked over her glasses at both tables. "Good morning," she said. "We are here on the petition filed by Ms. Brielle Kessler regarding the estate of Marlene Kessler. Counsel, appearances." Colin Pierce stood like he'd been waiting for a camera. "Good morning, Your Honor. Colin Pierce for the petitioner, Ms. Kessler. With Ms. Diane Kessler present." Maris rose from the back row. Maris Delgado for the respondent, Leah Kessler. The judge nodded once. All right. Mr. Pierce, you filed this as an emergency request tied to an alleged settlement and allegations of undue influence. You may proceed. Collins smiled in that way lawyers do when they think they've already won. Thank you, Your Honor. This is a sad but necessary matter. My client's grandmother was an elderly woman in declining health. The respondent, Ms. Leah Kessler, inserted herself into Ms. Kessler's finances, isolated her, and then, shortly before her death, secured changes that effectively disinherited the rightful parties. Brielle's face didn't move, but her fingers tapped once on her folder, a tiny rhythm like she was counting down. Colin opened the tabbed folder and began pulling out pages with dramatic care. We have statements from neighbors. We have a pattern of suspicious transactions. And we have communications, messages, that show the respondent pressuring Ms. Kessler to update paperwork while she was vulnerable. My mother sniffed softly behind him, on cue. Colin turned slightly toward the judge as if sharing a private truth. Your Honor, we are asking the court to enforce what should have been obvious, that the estate belongs to the family, not to a manipulator. We want everything, today, before assets are moved beyond recovery. The words landed heavy in the room. A couple people in the gallery shifted like they were watching a show they hadn't paid for but couldn't stop. The judge's eyes moved to me. Not accusing, evaluating. Ms. Kessler, she said, do you wish to respond? Brielle leaned across her table just enough for me to hear her without the microphones. Just sign, she whispered. I'll let you keep the car. Mom and I already agreed. I didn't look at her. I looked at the judge. Yes, Your Honor, I said, and my voice didn't shake. I do. Colin's mouth twitched like he expected me to plead or explode. He wanted a story. He wanted the courtroom version of me that matched his folder. I reached into my tote slowly, no sudden movements, no theatrics, and pulled out the manila envelope. It was thick enough to be unmistakable. The notary stamp across the flap looked like a bruise. I didn't open it. I didn't wave it. I just slid it across the table toward the center where the clerk could take it. The judge's gaze dropped to it. What is that? She asked. A sealed document from my grandmother's estate counsel, I said. Delivered to me with instructions not to open it unless I was in front of a judge. Colin let out a small laugh, the kind meant to make the room doubt me. Your Honor, this is theatrics. If there were legitimate documents, they would have been filed properly. Maris spoke from behind me, calm as a metronome. It was filed under restricted access, Your Honor. We have the receipt. The judge held up a hand. Clerk, take possession. Confirm the seal and the notary mark. The clerk lifted the envelope carefully, turned it once, and I saw the moment her expression changed, just a fraction, when she read the notary's name. Then the courtroom door opened. Not the small side door, the main one. A man stepped in wearing a dark suit that didn't wrinkle at the shoulders. He moved like someone who didn't need permission. A badge clipped at his belt caught the light, and in his hand was a thin file folder with a plain label across the front. He didn't look at Brielle first. He looked at the judge. The judge looked up, saw him, and her face went completely still. The judge didn't ask why he was late. She didn't ask if he belonged. She just said his name like it was already written somewhere in her file. Agent Rourke, she said, voice flat. Step forward. A ripple moved through the gallery. People sit up when they hear agent. It sounds like a different kind of trouble than petitioner and respondent. The man in the suit walked to the front rail without rushing. Up close, the badge wasn't decorative. It had weight. He held it up just long enough for the clerk to see, then tucked it back like he'd done it 1,000 times. For the record, he said, Evan Rourke, Financial Crimes Task Force. I'm here on an active matter connected to the decedent's estate. Brielle's lawyer straightened, smiling like this was an inconvenience he could argue away. Your Honor, I object. This is probate. If there's a separate matter, it doesn't belong in this hearing. Agent Rourke didn't look at Colin. He looked at the judge again, like Colin was furniture. With respect, Rourke said, it belongs wherever the forged documents were filed. That landed like a dropped plate. My mother's breath hitched behind Brielle, soft and dramatic, like she couldn't help it. Brielle didn't move at all, just blinked once, slow, like she was trying to reset the moment. The judge leaned back slightly, eyes narrowed. On whose authority are you intervening? Rourke set his thin file on the rail and slid a single sheet forward. It was crisp, bright white, with a stamp in the corner and a case caption that looked nothing like our probate title. He didn't read it out loud. He didn't need to. The judge reached for it and scanned the top half. I watched her eyes move line by line, the same way Grandma used to read contracts, quiet, patient, ruthless. Then she set the paper down and looked at the clerk. Lock the courtroom doors, she said. No one leaves until I say so. The sound of the latch clicking was small. Still, it cut through the room like a warning. Colin's smile faltered just for a second. Your Honor, that's Mr. Pierce, the judge said, not raising her voice. Sit down. He sat. Brielle leaned toward him, whispering fast. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the way her jaw tightened, the way her hand pressed hard against that color-coded folder, like she could squeeze a better reality out of it. Agent Rourke turned his file so the judge could see the tab. On the front, in block letters, it said, Kessler, Marlene/estate-related fraud allegations. Not family dispute. Not misunderstanding. Fraud. Rourke spoke again, calm and clean. 2 days ago, our office received a criminal referral from Denton and Harrow, the same firm named on the sealed envelope currently in the clerk's possession. My throat stayed tight, but my hands didn't shake. That was the whole point of doing it this way. Proof doesn't care if your voice cracks, Rourke continued. The referral included copies of a power of attorney presented to 2 financial institutions after Ms. Marlene Kessler was already under hospice care. The signature does not match known exemplars. The notary stamp on the document matches a stamp used in other open investigations. The clerk's face changed again at the word notary. Like the stamp on my envelope had suddenly become radioactive. Colin stood anyway, even after being told to sit, because some men can't help themselves. Your Honor, we're not here for criminal allegations. My client is seeking enforcement of her rightful inheritance. If someone wants to investigate, you filed an emergency petition, the judge cut in, requesting immediate transfer and immediate enforcement. You brought a folder labeled proof and asked me to treat the respondent like a predator. Her eyes flicked to Brielle. And now an agent walks into my courtroom with a stamped notice tied to forged documents. Brielle's smile finally slipped. It didn't disappear completely. It just cracked at the edges. My mother whispered, "This is a mistake," like she was praying the courtroom would believe her. Rourke opened his file and pulled out 2 glossy prints. He handed them to the clerk, who carried them up to the bench like they were fragile. One print is a scan of the power of attorney submitted, he said. Xiami, the other is a still image from the bank lobby camera on the date it was presented. The judge looked down at the prints. She didn't react at first. Judges are trained for that. But Brielle reacted. She leaned forward so fast her chair scraped the floor, the sound sharp enough to make people flinch. Her eyes were locked on the bench, on those images, like she was trying to burn them before anyone else could see. Your Honor, she said quickly, voice too bright. This is ridiculous. People forge things all the time. That doesn't mean... It means, Rourke said, still calm, that someone used a document claiming to represent Ms. Marlene Kessler while she was medically incapacitated. It means someone attempted to move funds and change account access. It means the estate is potentially tied to evidence. My mother's hands started to tremble in her lap. She tried to hide it by folding them tighter. It didn't work. Colin cleared his throat, trying to regain ground. Even if that were true, it has nothing to do with my client's request that the court enforce the family settlement. Ms. Leah Kessler received assets that were never meant for her. We have statements. We have witnesses. The judge lifted her gaze, slow. Mr. Pierce, she said, if there is an active fraud investigation connected to this estate, then I'm not enforcing anything based on your folder today. Not without understanding what was filed, by whom, and when. Brielle's nails tapped once, twice, 3 times against her binder, faster now. Rourke nodded toward the sealed envelope. Your Honor, Denton and Harrow also provided a sealed directive for this court, authored by Ms. Kessler's estate attorney prior to her death. They asked that it be opened only in open court if an heirship challenge was filed. The judge's eyes went to the envelope in the clerk's hands. Bring it here, she said. The clerk carried it to the bench. The notary stamp across the flap was still intact, a clean line like a cut that hadn't bled yet. The judge inspected it, then looked up at me. Ms. Leah Kessler, she said, you said you were instructed not to open it unless in front of a judge. Yes, Your Honor. And you complied. Yes. Brielle made a small, desperate sound that she tried to turn into a laugh. Come on, this is so dramatic. She's doing this for attention. I finally turned my head toward her, not with anger, just with the kind of calm that makes people feel exposed. I didn't file the emergency petition, I said. You did. The judge didn't even glance at Brielle after that. She took a letter opener from her desk, slid it under the flap, and cut along the seal in one clean motion. The sound was soft. But the room went silent anyway. She pulled out the first page and read without expression for a long moment. Then she handed it to the clerk. Read the first paragraph into the record, she said. The clerk swallowed, eyes scanning the header. Her voice came out steady, but her hands didn't. To the Honorable Court. If you are reading this, it means Brielle Kessler has contested my estate or attempted to force a transfer under false pretenses. I am writing this under oath with counsel present because I expect exactly this. Brielle's chair creaked as she stood halfway up again, face pale now, lips parted like she'd forgotten how to breathe. My mother's whisper turned into a thin, breaking sound. No. No, Marlene wouldn't. The judge's eyes stayed on the page. Her mouth didn't move. But something in her posture changed, like the courtroom had shifted from family dispute to someone is about to be in serious trouble. And the clerk kept reading, reaching the line that made Colin's pen stop in midair. The clerk's voice stayed steady, but the room didn't. She kept reading Grandma's letter like she was walking across thin ice, careful not to look up. I have been told repeatedly that I am confused, the clerk read, and that I should just sign so my daughter and granddaughter can handle things. I am not confused. I am tired. And I am recording this because I know exactly what they will do the moment I cannot stop them. Brielle's lawyer made a quick motion with his hand, like he could erase words out of the air. Your Honor. The judge didn't even glance at him. Let her finish. The clerk swallowed and continued. If any document appears claiming I granted power of attorney in the final months of my life, I am stating under oath that I did not. I refused. I never signed blank pages. I never authorized Diane or Brielle to present paperwork on my behalf. My mother's name, Diane, sounded different in that courtroom. Not mom, not family, just a person being named in a sworn statement. Diane made a small noise, half sob, half protest. That's not, she didn't. Brielle snapped her head toward her, sharp. Stop, she hissed, barely audible, and the judge's eyes lifted. Ms. Diane Kessler, do not speak while the record is being read. Diane clamped her mouth shut so hard her lips turned white. The clerk kept going. I am leaving my estate according to the plan my attorney drafted and explained to me in plain language with witnesses present. Leah is named executor because she has been the only person who asked what I wanted instead of telling me what I should want. Brielle is receiving what I chose for her. If she contests, I want the court to understand that she is doing it out of greed, not confusion. Brielle's face went rigid. Not tears, not shock. Calculation, like she was scanning for a loophole in a room with no exits. Colin Pierce stood again. Your Honor, this letter is self-serving hearsay. We have no proof of competency at the time it was written. We have... Sit, the judge said, and her voice had the weight of a gavel without the sound. He sat. Agent Rourke stepped forward a fraction. Your Honor, Denton and Harrow included attachments. The letter references them. The judge looked to the clerk. Is there an attachment list? The clerk flipped the page. Yes, Your Honor. Read it. The clerk's eyes moved down. Attachment A. Copy of my estate plan signature page with witness statements. Attachment B. Letter from hospice physician regarding my capacity. Attachment C. Statement from notary regarding date, time, and location of execution. Attachment D. Bank fraud report if any power of attorney is presented after this date. The words hospice physician made a couple people in the gallery inhale at the same time. Medical capacity, witnesses, notary. And this wasn't a sentimental note scribbled in a drawer. This was scaffolding. Brielle's hand tightened around her binder until her knuckles went pale. Colin tried again, softer now, like he was negotiating with gravity. Your Honor, even if this was drafted with counsel, it doesn't explain the suspicious transfers we have documented. The respondent moved money. She isolated Ms. Kessler. We have printed messages. Maris spoke from behind me, controlled and sharp. Printed messages are not metadata, Mr. Pierce. The judge's gaze cut to Colin. Do you have the original devices those messages came from? Colin hesitated for half a beat. In court, half a beat is a confession. We have screenshots, he said quickly. We have copies. The judge leaned forward. That wasn't my question. Brielle's voice came out too fast. She deleted them. She's good at that. I didn't roll my eyes. I didn't sigh. I just turned my palms upward on the table, empty, and kept my eyes on the bench. I didn't bring printouts, I said. I brought what my grandmother's attorney told me to bring. The judge nodded once, like she'd already decided which kind of person she was looking at. Ms. Brielle Kessler, the judge said. If you are alleging deletion, that suggests you had access to the originals at some point. Did you? Brielle's mouth opened, then closed. She glanced at Colin, then at my mother, then back at the judge. Oh, my mom did, she said, and then immediately added, because Grandma asked her to help. Diane made a choked sound, but it wasn't sorrow this time. It was panic. Agent Rourke slid one of the glossy prints down the rail toward the clerk again. Your Honor, so this is the bank still. The woman presenting the power of attorney is Ms. Diane Kessler. Diane stood halfway, then froze like she'd hit an invisible wall. That's not me. Rourke didn't raise his voice. The bank captured her driver's license scan as part of the presentation. The scan matches Ms. Diane Kessler's identification on file with the state. Colin jumped in fast. Objection. Foundation. We have not authenticated... The judge lifted a hand. Mr. Pierce, you filed an emergency petition asking for immediate transfer. You asked me to act quickly. Now you want me to slow down because the evidence is inconvenient. Colin's face flushed. He started to speak, then stopped when the judge's eyes narrowed. The judge turned to the clerk. Mark the sealed letter and attachments as Court Exhibit 1. You mark the agent's prints as Court Exhibit 2. Mark the petitioner's binder as Exhibit 3. Brielle clutched the binder tighter like it was life support. That's privileged, she said, voice shaking for the first time. It's not privileged if it's being used to influence the court, the judge replied. Hand it to the clerk. Brielle looked at Colin. Colin looked at the judge. Neither of them moved. The bailiff stepped forward, not aggressive, just certain. Ma'am, he said quietly. The court is ordering it. Brielle's eyes flashed. For a second, I thought she might throw it. Instead, she shoved it toward the clerk with a jerky motion that made papers shift inside. The clerk took it carefully and set it on the bench-side table. Maris didn't touch it yet. She just looked at the top page that had slid halfway out, and I saw what she saw. A page titled Settlement Agreement with signature lines already filled in, names typed, boxes checked, like it had been prepared for a quick, pressured signature. My stomach tightened, cold and hard. The judge's voice cut through it. Ms. Leah Kessler, you are not to transfer, sell, or encumber any estate-related assets until further order of this court. I understand, I said. Then she looked directly at Brielle. Ms. Brielle Kessler, the judge said, based on what has been presented, I am referring this matter for review, and I am ordering preservation of all relevant devices and communications. That includes yours. That includes your mother's. Brielle's face went blank. You can't do that. The judge didn't blink. I just did. Agent Rourke opened his thin file and pulled out a second sheet, and sliding it forward like a final card in a game Brielle didn't realize she was playing. Your Honor, he said, there is one more item you should see before anyone leaves this room. Agent Rourke didn't look like he enjoyed attention. He looked like he enjoyed paperwork that couldn't be argued with. He slid the second sheet onto the rail and turned it so the judge could read the header. Your Honor, he said, this came in this morning. It's connected to the very binder the petitioner just handed over. Colin's throat worked like he was trying to swallow a sentence. What is that? Rourke finally glanced at him, brief, flat. A certificate of completion. The judge's eyes moved down the page. I recognized the layout instantly, even though I'd never used it for anything important. A clean block of text, a list of dates and times, and beneath it, a tidy table of events, like a timeline that didn't care about anyone's excuses. Certificate of completion for what? The judge asked. Rourke tapped the corner with one finger. For a digital signature envelope tied to the settlement agreement inside Exhibit 3. The room didn't make a sound, but everything tightened anyway. Even the air. Colin stood again, slower this time, careful. Your Honor, that is irrelevant. A settlement agreement
Is a proposed resolution. It has the respondent's signature on it, Rourke said, still calm. That's why it matters. My sister's head snapped toward the binder as if it might bite her. The judge looked at the clerk.
Open Exhibit 3, find the settlement document. The clerk slid on gloves. She pulled the binder open like she was handling something contaminated and flipped through the tabs until she found the thick stack titled exactly what I'd seen earlier. Settlement Agreement. Immediate enforcement requested. She placed it on the bench-side table and held it so the judge could see the signature blocks. My name was there, not just typed. Signed. It was the kind of signature you get when someone clicks a button and the system stamps a name with a time. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I let the judge see my stillness. Ms. Leah Kessler, the judge said. Did you sign this agreement? No, Your Honor. Brielle laughed. One sharp sound that didn't match her face. Oh my God. She's going to say she didn't sign her own name? The judge didn't look at her. Ms. Kessler, you will speak when addressed. Brielle's smile twitched, then locked back into place like tape over a crack. The judge lifted the certificate again. Agent Rourke, walk me through what this shows. Rourke pointed to the table. It lists the email address that created the envelope, he said, the phone number used for verification, the IP address where the signature was executed, and the exact timestamps. The judge's eyes narrowed. And whose email created it? Rourke read it out loud without drama, like reading a license plate. Diane Kessler. My mother's shoulders jerked. I don't even... The judge held up a hand. Ms. Diane Kessler. Stop. Rourke continued. The envelope was created in the early hours of the morning on the date the petition was drafted. It was sent to an email address labeled as the respondents. Colin cleared his throat, trying to regain control. People use email addresses all the time. That doesn't prove anything. Rourke tapped another line. The signature was completed from an IP address registered to a residential internet account in Ms. Diane Kessler's name. A few heads in the gallery turned toward my mother like they were watching the direction of smoke. Brielle's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at Colin like she was waiting for him to fix it. He didn't. The judge looked down at me again. Ms. Leah Kessler, is that your email address listed as the recipient? The clerk leaned closer and read the recipient line under her breath, then frowned. It's not the respondent's current email, the clerk said carefully. It's an older address. My pulse thudded once, hard. It was an address I hadn't used in years, an account I'd abandoned after a breakup and a move. It had been compromised once, which was why I'd stopped using it. My sister knew it. My mother knew it. Because they'd been the ones helping Grandma email me when she got too shaky to type. The judge's gaze sharpened. So someone sent a settlement agreement to an old email address, then recorded it as signed from an IP tied to Ms. Diane Kessler. Colin started to speak. The judge cut him off without raising her voice. Mr. Pierce, do not insult my intelligence. Colin's lips pressed together. He sat down like his spine had suddenly gotten heavier. Brielle finally moved, pushing her chair back an inch. This is ridiculous, she said, voice too fast. Leah probably signed it and forgot. Or she's lying. She lies all the time. I let the accusation hang in the air. Accusations were cheap. Records were expensive. Maris spoke from behind me. I just one clean sentence. Your Honor, we can provide verification that Ms. Leah Kessler has not accessed that email account in years. Brielle snapped, how convenient. The judge ignored her again. She held the certificate up like it was a flashlight pointed at a stain. Agent Rourke, she said, does your office have authority to preserve and collect the devices connected to this alleged digital execution? Rourke nodded. Yes, Your Honor, we have issued preservation letters to the relevant service providers, and we can serve immediate subpoenas for the devices involved. Diane's breathing started to sound wrong, too shallow, like she couldn't find a full inhale. Brielle reached back and grabbed her mother's wrist under the table, not comfort, control. A silent warning to stay quiet. The judge leaned forward. Ms. Diane Kessler, Ms. Brielle Kessler, you are ordered to preserve all phones, tablets, laptops, and any device used to access email or sign documents related to this estate. You will not delete, reset, or alter anything. Do you understand? Brielle's chin lifted. This is harassment. It is a court order, the judge corrected. Answer the question. Brielle swallowed. Yes. Diane's voice was barely there. Yes. The judge turned to Rourke. Agent, serve whatever you need served. Rourke reached into his folder and pulled out 2 papers, already prepared, already labeled. He handed them to the bailiff, who walked them to Brielle's table with the quiet firmness of someone who's done this 100 times. The bailiff placed one paper in front of Brielle, the other in front of my mother. Brielle stared at it like it had teeth. What is that? She demanded. Rourke answered without looking up. A subpoena for devices and access logs. Colin finally found his voice again, thin with strain. Your Honor, my client is here as a petitioner in probate. This is turning into a criminal proceeding. We request a continuance. You requested urgency, the judge said, cool. And you asked me to act based on alleged manipulation. Now the evidence points to attempted manipulation of this court. She paused, then added, that is not something I take lightly. The gallery was dead silent. Even the shuffling stopped. Then Rourke's phone vibrated once in his hand. He glanced down at the screen. His expression didn't change, but his eyes went colder. He looked up at the judge. Your Honor, he said, we just got a real-time alert from the bank on the estate account. Brielle's head jerked toward him. Diane made a small broken sound like a glass cracking. Rourke lifted the phone slightly, not to show the gallery, just enough for the judge to see the notification banner. Someone is attempting to initiate a transfer right now, he said, from Ms. Marlene Kessler's primary account. For a second, nobody moved, like the whole courtroom was trying to decide if it had misheard him. A transfer, the judge repeated, slower now. Right now. Agent Rourke kept his phone angled down, respectful, but his voice stayed firm. The fraud unit's automated system flags estate accounts when there's a pending inquiry or hold. It just triggered. Someone initiated a wire request. Brielle's laugh came out thin and sharp. That's impossible. The account is in probate. Rourke's eyes flicked to her table. It's possible if someone has the login. My mother's hand slid under the table so fast it looked like a reflex. I didn't turn my head. I didn't have to. The movement was loud in its own way. The judge leaned forward. Agent Rourke, I want confirmation, on the record. Rourke tapped his screen once and put the call on speaker. A woman's voice filled the courtroom. Professional, clipped, the kind of tone that doesn't care who your family is. Metro Union Bank, fraud response. This line is recorded, she said. Agent Rourke, I'm seeing the alert. Do you confirm you're with the Financial Crimes Task Force? I confirm, Rourke replied. We are in open court with a probate judge. Can you state what you're seeing? A pause, typing, then an attempted outgoing wire from Marlene Kessler's estate account. Amount, $200,000. Beneficiary name, Brielle Kessler. Destination, an account ending in... Stop there, the judge said, voice like steel. That is enough. The gallery reacted like someone had pulled a fire alarm without the sound. Hands to mouths, a soft wave of shock. Brielle went so still, her shoulders looked locked. My mother's face drained. Not the dramatic tears from earlier, something real and ugly. Panic because the room finally had a number and a name. The judge looked straight at Diane. Ms. Diane Kessler, stand up. Diane's lips parted. I don't understand. Stand up, the judge repeated, and the bailiff stepped closer. Diane rose unsteady. Hands on the table, the judge ordered. My mother hesitated. The bailiff didn't touch her, just stood near enough that hesitation felt pointless. Diane placed her hands on the table, and her right hand was shaking. The judge turned to Rourke. Can your bank contact identify the access point? Device, location, anything. The fraud officer answered before he could. Yes, Your Honor. The attempt was initiated from the mobile app. Device ID is registered to the account profile. Location ping is consistent with this building. Brielle's head snapped up. That's insane. People spoof things. The judge didn't acknowledge her. She looked at the bailiff. Collect their phones. Now. Both of them. Preserve them in evidence condition. Colin Pierce stood like his legs decided on their own. Your Honor, my client, this is Mr. Pierce, the judge said. Sit down. You are one sentence away from joining them. He sat so fast his chair scraped. The bailiff held out his hand. Phones, he said quietly. Brielle clutched her purse. No. That's private. It's a court order, the bailiff replied. Brielle's eyes darted to Colin, begging for a shield. Colin stared at the table like he'd suddenly found religion in wood grain. Diane's phone was already in her hand. She hadn't even realized she'd pulled it out, like her body had betrayed her. The screen was lit. I saw it from my seat. Big, bright, unforgiving. A banking app, a confirmation page. Her thumb hovered over a button that might as well have said, finish it. The judge saw it too. The judge's expression didn't change, but the room got colder. Ms. Diane Kessler, she said, you were attempting to move estate funds while standing in my courtroom. Diane's mouth worked. No sound came out at first, then, I was trying to protect it. From whom? The judge asked. The person the decedent named executor? Brielle's voice cracked finally. She doesn't deserve it. Grandma was manipulated. Rourke spoke over her without raising his voice. Your Honor, that screen is enough for probable cause to seize the device. We will also request emergency holds on any connected accounts. The judge nodded once. Do it. Rourke held his phone up again. Fraud response. You heard the court. Put an immediate freeze on the estate account and flag any beneficiary account tied to this attempted wire. Already initiating, the fraud officer said. Freeze is being applied now. Confirmation will be sent to the court clerk. Maris, behind me, exhaled once. Controlled relief. The judge picked up her pen. Clerk, she said, draft an emergency order. Temporary injunction against any transfer of estate assets, immediate account freeze acknowledgement, and appointment of an independent administrator pending review. Brielle's head jerked. No, she can't do that. This is my family. The judge looked at her for the first time in what felt like hours. This is my courtroom. Brielle tried to smile again. It didn't work. Her lips trembled. The judge turned her gaze back to the documents. Ms. Leah Kessler, she said, you will remain under court supervision regarding the estate. You will cooperate with the investigation. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. And you will not speak to Ms. Brielle Kessler or Ms. Diane Kessler outside of counsel. I understand. Brielle slammed her palm against the table. You can't cut us out like that. The judge's voice dropped lower. I can do more than that. And if you raise your voice again, you will learn it the hard way. Silence fell so heavy, it felt like pressure in my ears. Agent Rourke collected the phones into evidence bags the bailiff produced from a drawer near the bench. Like this courthouse had seen enough families to keep supplies on hand. The plastic crackled loud in the quiet. Diane's shoulders started to fold inward. Marlene wouldn't do this to us, she whispered, almost childlike. The judge didn't soften. Marlene Kessler is not doing anything. The living are. Colin Pierce finally found a careful tone. Your Honor, if Ms. Brielle Kessler was unaware of her mother's actions, Rourke's eyes slid to him. The beneficiary on the wire request is Miss Brielle Kessler. Colin's mouth closed. The judge signed the emergency order with one decisive motion, then stamped it. The sound echoed. This matter is continued, she said. And for the record, this court will not be used as a tool for fraud. She looked at Brielle. Your petition is denied as filed. You will pay the respondent's attorney's fees related to today's emergency hearing. Further sanctions will be addressed after the investigation. Brielle's breath came out in a sharp, ugly sob, more rage than grief. Then the judge looked at me again, and her voice shifted. Still firm, but almost respectful. Ms. Leah Kessler, she said, your grandmother anticipated this. You did what you were told to do. That matters. I nodded once. My throat tightened anyway, but I didn't give it the satisfaction of spilling over. Because Grandma's voice was in my head, clear as ever. Don't argue, document. 3 weeks later, and I sat in a quiet conference room at Denton and Harrow with a stamped court order in front of me and a fresh official letter from Metro Union Bank confirming the freeze had been lifted under the new administrator's supervision. The letter wasn't poetic. It was perfect. It confirmed the attempted wire, the block transfer, and the creation of a new estate account that required two-party authorization going forward. No more secret logins. No more midnight clicks. Agent Rourke's office sent a notice to the court clerk, too. Short, formal, and brutal in its simplicity. The investigation had moved forward. Devices were imaged. Access logs were preserved. The timeline matched the certificate exactly. Brielle tried to pivot into a new story. She told anyone who would listen that I'd set them up. But the court didn't run on stories anymore. Wyatt ran on records, and records had timestamps. Diane stopped calling after her attorney sent a single, careful message. No contact. That was the strange part. When people like them finally meet a locked door, they don't knock softly, they stop. because they know the next push has consequences. And for the first time since Grandma got sick, the silence felt like peace, not punishment. If you've ever watched someone try to steal grief and call it family, tell me, what would you have done in my place? Like the video if you want more stories where proof beats performance, subscribe for daily dark family drama, and I'll see you in the next one.